back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745, and if you may notice, this does not look like you're old. I'm trying to think of something more clever. Hearts of Iron 4. This is Man the Gun, Hearts of Iron 4. There is so much to explore. This is really some of this is in the DLC, Man the Gun. Some of this is in the free update. I think the ship designer is in the DLC. But I'm sorry, I cannot easily distinguish between the two of them, which features are where. So we are looking at Man the Guns. And so we see a lot of new things, including this up here. This is fuel. I will say before we get going, I have played through to the German conquest of France as Britain, so sort of got a bit of a hang on this. So this is now a critical thing. When you build things like fighters, they no longer cost any oil. You don't have to worry about oil on any of your production. So you can produce as much aircraft, as much tanks, trucks as you want. You just produce, and they just cost, steel or maybe rubber and aluminum, depending, depending on needs. Fuel here. This number 267 or 76, sorry, is number of days until the fuel stock is full. Okay. Now, and I'm going into some detail on this before we're getting going, because this is important to understand here. And this current fuel, as you can see up the top, unfortunately I can't highlight here. Current fuel up at the top, that's what your current fuel state is. You see your daily gain, you see your base, you see something else, you have fuel capacity. That fuel capacity is this. Eventually you'll get to where you cannot store more fuel. But you can see the daily gain, the second one down, and then you can go down to this, below that sort of first paragraph set, to current consumption in a day, 0. We're burning 0. There's no ships sailing, there's no aircraft patrolling, there's no tanks or any unit moving that requires fuel. But it also says maximum consumption a day. Okay, and you can see that maximum consumption versus daily gain, 600 versus 2500K. We're going to call them barrels, for lack of a better term. And then you can see below that Army, Air, and Navy consumption. Historically, well, I know the Japanese, towards the end of the war, actually moved a lot of their surface fleet down here because they were able to process enough of the crude coming out of the ground to ship oil, fuel oil, which is much thicker than a gasoline, though there was some gasoline production down here, so that Japan could base its ships near the oil source. Italy had problems sending out its navy at times because of lack of fuel. So you can have fuel. I mean, you can have a bunch of ships and then go, oh, they're all sitting in port waiting to escort an invasion. So they will, and that's another thing which I really haven't gotten in detail, but you now escort invasions through. And so instead of having all of your ships out patrolling all the time, you can conserve, keep them in port, and then once you're really ready to use them, burn that oil at a high rate, achieve your goal, maybe just go and sink the enemy fleet and come back to port and wait until the enemy brings more ships in the area, and then you can do this. So this becomes a real thing. And I know Podcat has talked about fuel management and dealing with Germany and dealing with the Soviet Union and the AI programming. So we have some AI work definitely done on this. Now, because of my playing, I will say this: I have not seen an appreciable AI combat difference than previous to this. Not saying nothing has changed, just saying there has not been an appreciable improvement of AI. Quick thing was as tension with Germany increased, France moved all of its troops along the French border, leaving the Belgian border undefended, and now maybe because I had one British division spread out because I anticipated that, whether it's sort of like kind of, oh, there's a division there, let's move our troops out while I was trying to reinforce their position, not replace theirs. So this fuel is a critical thing. It will affect any mechanized units. It will, ground army. It will affect all air and all naval operations. Now, so that is important. Let's come over here to research. We're still looking on this synthetic fuel. That's this path. That's more or less. And sorry if I normally play a mod. Some mods still sort of use this. Things like Kaiserreich, other Black Ice. They've have their own sort of research path. But this is synthetic fuel. This is non-synthetic fuel. This affects how much fuel you gain per each, we'll call them barrel of oil, again 20% more, but also gain from refineries, and my understanding of that is just meaning synthetic refineries, unless there's something else that I've yet to dig into. And so you can research this. So this will increase the amount of fuel without increasing your actual control of oil wells. So if you have 20 oil wells, you go down this path, you'll get more fuel out of those oil wells. This, of course, if you're Germany and you want to increase your synthetic fuel, is something very much you'll want to look at. Originally, these were combined, but America, today it is back again to be a fuel exporter. We now produce so much more fuel than we use because of fracking. In World War II, also, again, the U.S. produced more oil and more gasoline, because gasoline is a refined product, after you come out of these kind of things, than it could possibly use in World War II. It had massive, had significant fuel rationing only because of this. U.S. Had and it was World War II that pushed synthetic rubber and development of synthetic rubber. Germany was also looking at synthetic rubber too. Actually, prior to the war, there was cooperation between some of the major companies between Germany and the U.S. on synthetics rubber substitutes. But so this is something you will want to look at as the U.S. to develop synthetic rubber here. Britain at start has no need for that and won't, so long as it can hold access here. And actually, no one has, you can see over here, if you can hold these territories in the Allies, none of the Allies need synthetics. They just need to trade with them on that. There is a decision here, which is the thing. Don't know if this was ever. Yep. Someone made sure that Tanganyika had rubber because they had rubber back then. So Britain is getting some rubber for there, but there was also here to grow rubber in Nigeria. I don't know. Does Brazil have any rubber? Oh, I guess you just click over here on resource map. Yes, there was in the very latter part of the 19th century, early part of the 20th century, once they found out about vulcanizing, heating up rubber to make it last longer, whatever you want to call it, to make tires and other things, there was a move to get rubber production over in the Americas as well as other places. So there will be access to rubber. We're on that. But that is a critical thing to know from day one. I want to see if there's something else, because we will be starting and setting up and playing conventionally, but I wanted to cover that in some detail. So again, we now trade here, but it's no longer a production There's a bunch of new mechanics we will be seeing, governments in exile, and a lot of other things. Okay, so let's get sort of starting out playing as Britain. Coming over here, I think the first thing you should do, well, if you want to go, if you're an alt history person and wanting to do this, you can come over here and to change the course to go down either the King's Party, which is sort of a royalist thing, a fascist thing, or a communist path. We're going to do steady as she goes, which will give us a basic thing. But what's one of the main reasons we're starting this with this is 35 days, only one of the few. I wish they did more of the national focus. And this is going to be my critique of this. They want to have this national focus for multiple reasons. Partially, and I understand this, a lot of players, not necessarily you watching, but a lot of players don't know history. But also, it's just like, if you want to get to this, say, a secure Iraq to make sure you get the oil or something from them, and secure Iran, which that did happen historically. So if you want to get to something like this, you need to know, and this is where I agree with them, that, oh, you need to take home defense path, not global defense path, because those don't lead to this. I like that. I wish that they were not just all 70 days basic effects. It's just a little too simplified. Okay, now, on production. I think it's best, instead of have one factory, we're going to do this to a bunch, but we're also going to come down. It's all going to go fast, I know, but I want to get some of the... So what I want to do is concentrate production. Oh, no, grab hold of that. Instead of spreading it out to get it done. Oh, well, you should be above that. Okay. So, and we'll also move that down and this down. To get the things, I wish they would do this a little better. Get the things that are going to get through production as fast. Yeah, as you can see, some of these things are going to happen fairly quick. We want to get through producing the navies. That. And now we need to look here. We do have a bit of a manpower situation, but we can do production. But we don't have to, which I normally would do, is hold back on, particularly as Germany, on production of things that cost fuel. So we can start doing that, but we do need to get some of the basics here. Let's do that, I think. Okay, research. If you're going to do this, might as well do this as early as fast, because it speeds up other research. We're going to do that and that. Get all that started. Now, we're playing as Britain, not as Germany. Normally I would come over and start doing that. But what we are going to do here is get the Hurricane, because I want to get these into production as soon as possible. We can look at this 3D model. That's what's going to be flying in the skies. More like a Spitfire to me. Okay, now we're also going to start with a round or so of civil factories. Get that going. And that gets us starting on the clock. Since we have time now that things are going, I don't like this, that everything is vacant. I'm not necessarily saying everything should be filled, but I would have some of the staff for all of the majors with some historical starting points. again, from my shall we say, playing analysis, I think we need, with all of these things that are going on, not that you need to or even should be doing all of these, and there'll be more coming along. I think having more political power would really help things. Hurricane Fighter was actually very good. The Spitfire was better. At least that's my, and I think most people's. The king is dead. Now we have the new king, which is actually making things worse for us. I think mine and most people's opinion, the Spitfire was dead. The Hurricane was good. Produced, at least up through the Battle of Britain, produced a lot more Hurricanes than they did Spitfires. So yeah, and so it's a good thing. It's good enough, and some of the elements, as we'll see here in this, simple numbers are important. And so if you can produce them faster than Spitfires, are a very good thing. We're going to then come over here to limited rearmament, which will give us 4 more civilian factories. We are already building 4, but we now can go, oh, I clicked the wrong thing. I want to reinforce the empire. Oh, they're not letting us. Oh, do we have to go? Cancel. That's right. We have to cancel first. We can now switch over to there and then decide, nope, that's wrong. I want to do this. So we can oh, we have to cancel that, right? Cancel. So yes, I messed things up a little bit, but I wanted to show that you're no longer locked in. Very good, Patrick, but I didn't know whether into like 42 and 44 and whatnot, what they were producing the most of, to know which aircraft was produced most. And both the Spitfire and the Hurricane were upgraded with better and bigger and more powerful engines and things like that over time. So it's, you know, it's not a which is better, the Spitfire or the ME-109? Well, which Spitfire and which ME-109? You know, is it the Emil model of the 109, the E, or is it a later? You know, it's back and forth, and so there isn't just a single model of it. The early Mustangs, the P-51s, they weren't that good until they got the British Rolls-Royce engine. Their engines were made in America, but the British designed engines into them, and it really ramped up their performance. So they got much better. I don't know. No, I don't think it does. But I'm not sure. We will come over here and see. But you do have, whether it's a misclick or just simply they're remilitarizing the Rhineland, or just simply something happens and you go, oh yeah, this is important, but I've got to reinforce the defenses of Gibraltar or something like that, and you have the ability to change national focus. This was the point that I wanted to show you. And on either front, it's good to have that happen. Yes, USA man. I would say more than sent volunteers. There were Brazilian military units fighting in Italy, and there was one sort of heroic last stand of 3 Brazilians, if I remember correctly, that fought to the death in there. But they were Brazilian. I would call them Brazilian Army units. They were equipped with American uniforms and American guns by the time they were, you know, over in combat. But they were very much more than just volunteers signing up for somebody else's army. I believe the Hurricane was considered more robust and easier to produce, while the Spitfire was superior. Yep, I agree with you, JP. That's my understanding too. And Oh, what do we have here that's coming up? Oh, it's this Second London Naval Conference, which is already sort of going on. So as you can see, we're filling up our reserves of oil. Oh, sorry, another thing. And I should have went earlier on with oil, but if you're still watching, come over here to buildings. There's this new building, fuel silo. You can now put fuel silos around your country that will increase how much fuel you can stockpile. So if I were Germany, whether I was importing fuel or some of the limited oil that was in Germany, or still is, especially if you now frack it, or out of synthetic fuel production, if you have fuel silos now, you can start building up your reserves of fuel for future use. I quite honestly don't know, can you capture fuel? I don't know if you can. I just, quite before somebody asks, Spanish Civil War. So I do not know. Okay, so we are through all of our pre-war production of ships. Now, let's take a look at ships. We now have, okay, we now, trying to think too, word my thing. Hearts of Iron 4 has very much looked at modular style development to get things. All light tanks are the same in the game. Every light tank, from the Soviet light tanks, the German light tanks, the Japanese light tanks, are the same unless you create a variant. Again, I hate. Have I gotten my opinion over strong enough? That all of these are all starting out as 0. It again goes back to all of these are starting out empty. I hate the design decision that this is a progressive thing. That being said, I agree with Podcat in the idea that armies just didn't have, the American Army didn't have 20 different division, like we can see in Hearts of Iron 3, every time you build a division, it's slightly different than the last time you build a division. They built them normally in groups, and sure, you can, a National Guard division organization, table of organization may be better, or different than a regular Army division, and even though once it's deployed overseas, it may maintain its other things. So that there are variances, absolutely. And I agree with the idea that not making every single armor unit have its own unique table of organization, OOB, however you want to say it. I agree with that, but you should have some starting amounts along with various reasons to expand it. No problem, Tippett. So, so if you want to make, say, a light tank with a 37mm gun versus a light tank with basic machine guns or 20mm gun or whatever it is that this is sort of without, and so you can do that. And if you want to do, we're going to have very reliable ones, or they're not going to be. So this is very good. And this is one way to do it. And a good way to do it, if you didn't start out with either everything starting out generic, because you could start out with Vickers 2 variant, and could have whatever for the Vickers, this early model 1920s tank, how they want to figure that out. What's the gun caliber, the armor thickness, and it may be all standard, but the German Panzer IIs or Panzer Is or Panzer IIs might start out as more reliable, or other similar sorts of starting points to define them differently. The other way to do it, of course, is sort of the black ice way, is that you have a historical tree of the historical models of aircraft, of tanks that have minimum or no variants. It's just built into the models. So, but along this, oh, I wanted to come up here, and we were coming here for a reason. They now have ship designer, and so you now get a basic cruiser hull. And then you research gun types, ammunition types, gun types, you know, damage control, fire control. And trust me, we're getting here for a reason. And then you can come here. And so now, and here they actually have started out with just what I was wanting them to more or less do, is that they already have, because there's like two types of engines here, light engine 2. You can see here its stats, but also look at production cost is of 90, production cost of 120. So do you want a lot more cheaper, you know, or you just want a lot of vessels cheaply, or are you willing to pay the extra and have them have max speed 30% over that, and reliability, I guess it's the same here, fuel usage. So you can determine what engine you're putting into this, and these are sort of the historical destroyers. Torpedoes, and you can see here, notice there when I hover over this, and when I'm here, I'm over here, because what we can do is come here, this is sort of where we were going, put on mine laying rails on the back, or minesweepers. You can only have one, and that's practical. So and so your depth charges, you can sort of do this. Anti-aircraft gun slots, main gun slots, things are locked here. So this allows for a lot of modularization and development. This is a really good development. This will give to those who want to do deep dives, and I am not that as a modder, but want to do deep dives into ship design, and because this is the E, F, G, H class, because presumably, and I don't know in detail, they probably made like 3 of the 4 of the F, you know, some of the G, and they're just all slight variants on the same basic hull design. So these are the British with the raised front deck. I call it the Atlantic hull as opposed to the American flush deck style, but and you can maybe deal with some of that here. But also you can come up here with this, I don't know, sort of looks like a snowflake, but I guess this is an asterisk for all of them. But if we just want to find out mine vessels, oh, there we go, mine layers. If we just want to see mine clears, we don't have any. We don't have any of those currently. So we don't have any ships that will boat. So we're going to start here with our, because we have no naval experience to do any variants. We're going to put these light hulls in as mine laying vessels. Oh, and when you make a variant, or even now, if you want to come in and change its icon, this is currently as a fighter for carriers, but if you want to change the icon, you can into another one of the other groupings. So just so that you know of what that is, and you can see them here, just so you can get groupings and help you identify the roles. I don't know if you made this point, but I would keep the infantry stuff in the same upgrade system and change all the tanks, planes, and moto and mech into something like what they did in Naval Tree. Yeah, you could do that. I like the historical model, the historical progression research approach paths, but I think they're both good. Both are equally have their benefits and their negatives. You know, do you want to force the Italians to to make all their historical mistakes? Maybe not, but maybe you also don't want to let them make German Panzer equivalents either, you know, because they're Italians. Comes back to part of my design philosophy on this. What are we playing here? This as a game, and again, I know I'm talking a lot about this. This, and I'm coming over to here. This to me is EU 20th century, trying to make, and their player / customer base is Crusader Kings, EU, Europa Universalis, and Victoria. And these are all normally about 100 years at least game era progressions or longer. And they are they flow. You know, if you started a 100-year period, it's easy for Britain to make different decisions dealing with its colonies in America, to not have the American Revolution. You know, how they did simple things like have just a few token members of the British Parliament, you know, coming from the Americas, just a few, or some other things. You could easily do a few what ifs that if you start in 1700, say, and you're moving forward, by the time you get to 1776, you can easily have reasonable what ifs. But if you're starting in 1936, in Britain, in my opinion, none of these are a reasonable what if. Okay, yeah, black shirts existed. Did they ever even get to 5% of any of the voting numbers anywhere? I don't think so. I don't think they were 5%. I mean, even in any one district. Was Mosley in Parliament? Yeah, so maybe, but you know, they really did not get anywhere. So I really think this EU 20th century is not the design decision that I want to take. Okay, as players know, I'm an infrastructure type person on this stuff first. So we're going to go the shadow scheme because we want to get to the industrial effort, but more is research slots and then the Royal Factory, Ordnance Factory. So we're going to focus on this right now. Not much better at first. The Panzer IV 75mm gun was not the greatest 75mm gun, not what it eventually was. They're basically, to a point, the same tank, except for the Panzer IV was just a bit bigger, designed as a support tank, and so it allowed it to put on more armor and a bigger 75mm gun eventually. But design-wise, as in ergonomics, three-man turrets, vision ports, all that kind of stuff, they're very similar tanks. They both change over the time period. Okay, German Reich dominates Dutch trade negotiations. Okay. Now, also, again, on the idea of do stuff. Oh, we just lost. See, I hate what just happened. I had an event pop up that I had no choice over. So, that, because it cost me political power, I would have liked maybe decide to do nothing. About to say he was only in Parliament because of his array. Was it House of Lords? Yeah, could be. Mosley. Yeah, I'm not, I know some about Mosley and his crew, but I'm not the, oh, we're on pause. I didn't realize that. Sorry, people. I want to keep the game going. No, he was elected. Yeah, I thought so. I thought he was elected into it. member of parliament. But they held very few seats. They were a very marginal thing. They were a real thing. I'm not trying to dismiss them. It's the communists were a real thing in Britain, but they were nowhere near coming to power, having a revolution. I mean, we could talk about the communists more so. Minor thing maybe, but really much more minor for the fascists in France. And the reason France, I would say, comes close to it, comes of some of the Western powers. Obviously, we do have a communist sort of progressive revolution going on in Spain that then the nationalists react. And that sort of gets to my point on France. If we have too much communist power, it looks like it's getting to be too powerful, it will grow the fascist right as a response. So I could see within this time period, 36 onward, a possible communist uprising in France that may push also a more fascist reaction to it. But I can't see that as any possibility in Britain. You know, I could talk. Now, we can also talk in 1933 or 1930 in Germany about a communist takeover or a Kaiser restoration in 30 to 33 type time frame, but not by the time we're getting to 36. Just ain't going to happen in Germany in 36. So I would much rather to have, I want to come over here. I would much rather to have, instead of something, is just, instead of oppose Hitler, secure a new state, revives the Kaiserreich. Well, maybe that's sort of happening this, but I would much rather just have a an alt history start non-Nazi Germany, or, you know, instead of trying to have this oppose Hitler path, I would just have something that you click at the start and you pick, is this the Kaiser's Reich revolt? Is this some sort of, you know, new Weimar thing established, or some sort of socialist thing or something? I don't know. That's what I would do. I guess here's the commun or whatever, but I would do that. Just go, hey, it's completely different. Oh, his title is Sir is hereditary. Okay, Tippett. Panzer IV was supposed to be a support vehicle, while the Panzer IV was to be the main medium tank. It was indeed after Barbarossa. Yes, absolutely, JP. But also, with all that, yeah, you're very right. But they were very, very similar vehicles in design, you know, in crew layout, you know, and all of that, which is important. Because if you look at, like, the Soviets are mostly two-man turrets, unless they're the really lightweight things, where the French are mostly one-man turrets. Those are, you know, if you start looking at those kind of variants, the Panzer IIIs and the Panzer IVs are very, very similar vehicles. So, playing this, I have a tendency to want to do this, and this could be for the bombing and other, and it also, if you're jumping between different manufacturing different things a lot, this could be better. But because we're playing the leaders, we're playing a Commonwealth nation, I found in my recent playing, this is a better choice, because we will get bonuses to research this, because our allies, Canada, you know, our Commonwealth members, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, are going to go down to this path. So we will get research bonuses by going down this path. So we will go down it much faster. So we're going to pick that eventually. That's my recommendation on this, and why. Second London Naval Treaty is signed. And now, before something snatches it away, I want to get more naval experience. it can be very. I look. This guy is after 150. We could do him now. Naval Experience daily 0.05. Naval Doctrine +7. James Somerville. Same daily Naval Experience game, but it's 10 for Fleet in Being Doctrine, and that is this one, which we're already just by 1, but started down the path, and that's what we're going to do. So that will help speed up any of those doctrine researches. But if you're going to do something that's going to help you do more of the same thing, might as well do it earlier. So Philip Kerr here with Silent Workhorse will get us political power gain of 15%. So we might as well do that earlier to gain more political power faster, quicker, and do that as our earliest opportunity. So we're doing him as our first government minister. And so that is my recommendation. Get that early, get that going. Then I want to do the theorist. Doing this theorist really hampers I almost want to go in and do a save game editor or cheat in more army experience. There are a few things to do this because our army is going to be, in my opinion, woefully unprepared historically for fighting in France. Worse than history, because they've infantry division. Okay, yeah, well, yep. The tank brigade was sort of an experimental thing, but there's no real way of getting stuff before the war at all. So again, sort of my ranting on that, sorry, but it's frustration I feel. So, but we're also wanting to play naval campaign here as the main focus, and so I want to have the naval experience. Okay, so we are now full with fuel. So we are, well, you can see a little bit coming in. We're functionally not going to be able to stockpile any more fuel until we build more fuel silos, or we change here. We can see here early mobilization. Oh, you see it here. Down towards the bottom, civilian economy minus 25%. It doesn't show up on here. Oh, well, it does. Okay, yeah, it does actually show up. But you won't have that negatives on some of these other ones. So, okay. Edward VIII's abdication crisis. For some time, King Edward VIII has entertained hopes to marry the American Wallis Simpson. The constitutional crisis has now arisen as Miss Simpson is not only divorced from her previous husband, but in point of fact still married to her current husband, presently pursuing a second divorce. The general outrage has ensued on the grounds that, as the king and being the head of the Church of England, Edward cannot marry a divorcee. The king, however, has made it abundantly clear that he is very much in love with Miss Wallis Simpson and intends to marry her regardless of the opinions of the governments and subjects. And as such, there are only 3 options remain open to him. The government and the governments of the Dominion have already stated that any alternative to abdication would be unacceptable, and repercussions of trying to force through the marriage, even attempted compromise, would likely be dire, not only for Britain itself, but also for its ties to the Commonwealth. And the King's closest advisors continue their attempts to convince him that the public wants or waits with bated breath for the resolutions of the conflict between the King and the cabinet. And as you can see, is why I don't do scripted stuff. I don't read things naturally or well. I can talk well. Oh, I want to catch up. Okay, I want to see the USA. Does it have a fleet for basis agreement if you get 50 destroyers? I didn't get far enough to get the 50 destroyers kind of thing. Send an attaché to. Yeah, that's a nice idea, Patriotic Brit, but you can only do it once world tensions is high enough. And I was at war with Britain before we got to 50% world tension. As Britain, I was at war. So, yeah, that may not work the way we would want to do exercises. Exercises, that might be a good thing. I normally used not wanting to do that. Going shopping and I'm being dragged out. Sorry to hear that, patriotic Brit. Okay. All hail King Edward. See ya. Okay, see you later, patriotic. Abdicate, abdicate, abdicate. Now, I do believe that amongst the people at the time, divorce was a much bigger deal. I think there was something more going on with Edward. If it was just the Wallace-Simpson thing, I think he would have remained king. He was very, very personable. I don't think he was a Nazi. I don't think he was a fascist, but he had questionable friends, and I think there's more that still hasn't been let out as to why the establishment would not let this happen. Now, through particularly the latter half of the 19th century into the 20th century, we have the rise of the middle class. And we have this rise of we'll call them middle class values. Where if we look into the 18th century, we can see all kinds of crazy things going on with the House of Hanover, to the point of locking up the Queen. Oh, you're sleeping around with too many people, we're locking you up. And if you look at the Gilray cartoons, very famous cartoonist in the 18th century, and other kind of stuff that they were muck they were throwing around about the king. Trust me, I'm not in favor of the Hanovers, but all that kind of stuff, there was very, very little respect, or sort of like pick the worst rock star's public or private behavior and then double it, and that's what your leader of your country's doing. Yeah. So the idea that the king is doing something like getting married to a divorcee who's still seeking a divorce was more than what we would think about it today. But it is not. But I don't think it's enough for him to abdicate. I think there was more going on that we still don't entirely know. We're going to have him abdicate just because we get stability and a better king. Compromise morganatic marriage, base stability, it's not that good. Insist on royal marriage, that really sort of is a bad choice. So we're going to go with the top one here. And we have construction. Okay, well, let's come over here. We want to do excavation. And well, if we focus on naval stuff, some of these other things are going to happen by our Commonwealth brethren, which will give us, if we're following along a few steps behind, which will give us bonuses in research. So we're going to do this submarine hull, get away from early submarines into 36 submarine hulls. And so we're going to research that next. And now that we have him, weekly stability, oh, we haven't lost him yet. Now we have. And so now we have stability gain of 15%. So we are gaining in stability. This one, as opposed to war support. I'm quite happy that they separated out national unity. This is in essence sort of still national unity, but we now have war support, which has some of that element. So no longer the idea of you beat down national unity and then you get the country to surrender by strategic bombing. It's, you can have national unity, everybody's communist or something, and beat down war support, or you can have war support but a very chaotic nation, you know, can go back and forth. And again, we want to move down here. This will of course help our research. Don't worry, we will use it. Okay, now we've got rid of that. Still not yet. Got that. So we're going to produce mine laying cruisers. We're going to lay mines everywhere. We're going to be able to walk across the English Channel on mines. Don't know if you can quite walk on mines. They might blow up as you put your feet on them, but you know what I mean. Do the carrier. We will. Oh, well, actually, we will do that eventually, but right now we're just going to do this. I want to get some of this other stuff done because I want to build mine laying submarines. Or no. So we're going to research to get some mine laying submarines out there. And we're going to lay mines, 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 everywhere mines. What was the M3 tank like? Well, the M3 medium is the Lee Grant. You know, the 75 millimeter gun and the 37 millimeter turret on top, the sponson. For what it was all right. Yeah, big target too, sure. But if you're looking at a 37 millimeter armed Panzer III, it's got plenty of armor on it. Not that I'm not saying it can't be punched, but it's got plenty of armor for that gun. You're even talking a short-barreled 50 millimeter gun or the short-barreled 75 millimeter gun. Before the hollow charge rounds come out, you're talking some pretty decent armor for it. It's only once you get to the long-barreled 50 and the long-barreled 75 or the hollow charged rounds. I think we may do his suggestion on the yeah, carrier version of the Hurricane, although we're not producing any carrier aircraft yet. Well, it will affect things. Okay, another thing, JP, they'll send minesweepers ahead. Okay, one, that means they have to build minesweepers. I don't know if they will. But we also now have naval terrain. And I don't know how important it will be to this game. And I also want to say right now a thank you, and I'm going to make a thank you video here. We used to have one sea zone for the Baltic, which included way up to here. And we also had one air zone for the Baltic, which included way up to here. So no matter where you put the fighters, they were bad coverage. But now we have lower Baltic. We can do fighters there as Germany. And so we can fully dominate here without covering anything up here maybe, or get some long range, you know, aircraft to maybe do some coverage up there. But now we have this, and then we have this section. Now come to western approaches. I was looking at this and I'm going, yeah, you know, we really should have like a sea zone that's the Irish Sea. We need to do better, because the reason we need the sea zone for the Irish Sea is we can come here because we now have this sea zone here, the Aegean, and notice when I hover over this, and these pictures are very telling. This tells you if it's raining out here, this picture. Now also day night, which we have turned off, which everybody plays with turned off, which I said was from the day one that they first put it out there. Well, that's why I said M3 medium, JP, the M3 Stuart versus the Lee Grant Lee. But here we have fjords and archipelagos. So we can see here fuel consumption is more, positioning, movement, visibility, that kind of thing. Then we have here is just ocean, which is standard. That's ocean. We come out to here. We have deep oceans. So now chance of hitting a mine. So if we mine this area, chance of hitting mines are much less. Various movement penalties are different for different vessel types. Destroyers, a lot more movement penalties. Other ships, no, battleships, no movement penalties. Carriers, no movement penalties. I'm not sure if there's other, just what, shallow sea as opposed to archipelagos. So this is archipelagos. You can see little islands in the thing here. A shallow sea here, which we have submarine visibility plus 100%. So if you're stationing subs in the English Channel, they're going to get seen a lot easier. I remember reading, and I don't know, is this shallow sea? No, this is ocean. This should probably be a shallow sea. I know it's sort of deep here. Well, or what's this? Ocean, archipelago. Just because of the clarity of the Mediterranean in what I've read, I know it's deeper here than here, off Malta, and maybe why some of these sea zones should be smaller. But they had real trouble. They had to go deep during daylight, not just below the ocean levels like they could out here and not be seen, but at the same depth you could be seen in submarines easily here. So you now have sea terrain. So shallow seas, other things here. So that's why whether I'd include this province here or not, but I would definitely these provinces here and the Highlands, especially go to the Highlands. The Irish is part of the Irish Sea with the Isle of Wight and probably one of you British people. I'm blanking on the island out here off Wales. Oh boy, where the Druids used to live. I know the name, and so but would also be sort of an archipelago, I would say. We can come up here off the coast here. This is considered archipelago. So we now have sea terrains. Barents Sea is just ocean, so we don't have an Arctic Ocean. Well, oh yeah, the Isle of Man. Well, this is the Isle of Wight. No, the Isle of Wight's down here. No, what here? No, right off the coast here. Where the Druids used to hang out. Anglesey. Yeah, okay, that's right. But so this would probably be fjords and archipelagos and that kind of thing. So we now have that. So that does matter for mining. And so the Baltic is a shallow sea here. This is enough islands that they're considering this fjords and archipelagos, and here also with Denmark. So yeah. We've got that. Now we could do another political advisor here. Some of them are cheaper, but we're going to save this up because I want to get that theorist. And so that's a new thing, and that will also matter in places out here. This is just ocean here. This is shallow sea. Come here, shallow sea. Up here, shallow sea. So we now have, but this also, of course, I don't care so much about the stats of any one of these things because I'm not going to be the best judge of what the effects of a shallow sea should be. But this allows to open it up for modders to create something like Arctic Oceans. How that might be different than what a deep ocean would be, or something like that. And so all that can be modded. And I think on that note, we're going to end the episode. Not the stream, guys. We're going to have plenty more coming up. But those of you watching later on YouTube, I want to thank you all for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. There's a subscription button probably popping up on your screen. And of course, I love hearing from you, so please post questions, comments, suggestions. See you next time. And if you do me a big favor, either one of the other things popping up on the screen or on the right on the suggested, hit another one of my videos. and watch a few seconds of it. Tells you YouTube algorithm good things about the channel, even if it's something you've already seen. Just watch, like I do say, just like 5-10 seconds of another one of my videos will help me out immensely. Thanks so much. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.